Vision, Vision India Forum welcomes Sri T.V. Rao, Dr. T.V. Rao, the great pioneer of human resource management and development. I mean, humanity is about human resource, and the man teaches you how to manage human resource. What a pleasure to welcome Dr. T.V. Rao, the man who is, lovingly known as the father of HRD in India for decades. Somebody who introduced HR practices for a company, for a behemoth like Larsen and Toubro, L&T, almost 40 years back. He is somebody who has been the torchbearer of management of human resources. India has grown considerably in terms of the employable workforce in this country since independence, 75 years and counting now. The number of companies that have come up, mushroomed over the years, have grown exponentially, starting with the age of industrialization to today, where we stand is the age of startups. From industrialization to startups, nothing moves, without proper management of human resources. If India has to really grow in terms of being a global superpower economically, India's corporate sector, why I focus on the corporate sector is because that is where the major talk around human resource management centers around. Yes, human resource is important in every organization. It's very important in government. It's very important in schools. It's important in managing institutions. It's important in managing families. Even the growing rates of divorces and the breakup of the family system. I think Dr. T.V. Rao would probably agree with me. Even that could be something which proper human resource management could take care of, because as the senior man of the family or the lady of the family, if you can have management techniques which help you run a big joint family, that also helps in saving the social fabric from breaking up, which today is one of the big concerns that India faces. Aping the West, technology, they're transgressing all aspects of our life. So human resource is something which is inextricably linked to human existence, and human existence, management of the human resource is what Dr. T.V. Rao is going to teach us today, is going to explain to us today how he and Mr. Parekh thought of taking up this discipline decades back, when probably people never even thought about it. People were generally involved thinking about careers in medical, careers in engineering, and so on and so forth. What made them think about something, a discipline, which could be very important? And today what we see is that this human resource issue has become such a big issue, management of human resource. It has always been, right from the unions, trade unions, so on and so forth. And today we can definitely agree that if we do not practice human resource management in letter and spirit, organizations, especially the corporate world, is definitely going to suffer from a productivity perspective, from a sustainability perspective, and from their own existence perspective, which will again be in a dilemma if human resource management is not properly dealt with. And today, Dr. T.V. Rao is going to take us through his journey, not only his personal journey, but also the journey that he has had over the last 40 years, teaching the world, teaching the country about the human resource management issues, dynamics. He's written lovely books. Missionary, HRD Missionary is one of the most important books, one of the most beautiful books. It's a landmark documentation of HR practices and HR spirit. And Dr. T.V. Rao also throw some light on that particular book and a few others that you've written. Take us through the journey of HRD. Take us through the major issues, major challenges of the HRD manager today, the HRD function today. It has also evolved over the last few decades. Probably what was important 40 years back is no more. Something else is important now. Going forward in 2047, if India has to become a strong superpower, contribute economically to the world and to the country, the GDP has to grow. It's going to be only possible when we take care of the human resource and harness issues like harness the women workforce, the issues like untapped potential. If these things are being taken care of, only then India will reach uh, where it should reach. And the Prime Minister, current or probably whoever comes next, the vision of making India the global superpower with a 5, 7, $10 trillion economy can be achieved only if we have companies which become large, taking care of their human resources without wasting any further time on my talk. We would all like to hear the great, sagacious Dr. T.V. Rao. It's an opportunity which this country, these youngsters, the managers, the corporate world, the world, generally the people managing organizations should never miss out, because Dr. T.V. Rao is a phenomena which has happened in the last 75 years in this country. We look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Dr. T.V. Rao.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amit ji. I think it's a great work that you're doing. I think what you're doing is based on the basic philosophy that human beings have a lot to contribute. I think you build collective vision when you go to every nook and corner and ask everyone, what do you think should be done to reach first of all, what is the great vision? How can we reach and things like that? I strongly believe that people, particularly if you ask me, Indians are highly born talented, irrespective of where you are born, brought up, etc. I think I can briefly mention about my own mother, who used to be a daily wage laborer. And later she went through so many avatars. She was a Mutha Mistri, then later she went into Ayurvedic medicines. Then she started selling rice and paddy. Then she started at a point of time when I was duped by the builders in constructing a house for me in Hyderabad, which she never visited. I think she went all the way from village there, did so many things, and also became, I think, Andhra, one of the Mahila associations. And when she died as a secretary of that association. And she couldn't read and write even at that time. Very recently, I was told of a very interesting person by name Mrs. B, about whom Warren Buffett talked about. She was sometime in the early part of the 19th century. She couldn't read and write, went from Russia, from a Jewish family to USA, and then learned how to read and write English from her children as they were going to school, learned from them and became a billionaire and sold her business to Warren Buffett sometime and lived up to 103 years of age. There's a lot written about it. I'm mentioning these two examples to say human beings are born highly talented. And I particularly think Indians, with the kind of emotions we have, with the kind of knowledge we have, with the kind of soil in which we are born, are extremely talented people. And the evidence is, look at all our Indians who have gone to other countries and achieved phenomenal successes, including getting Nobel Prize. In fact, if you look at the top management gurus, for quite some time, the list of management gurus was my colleague C.K. Prahlad, who used to be working at IIM. In fact, he graduated from IIM. He was sent to Harvard. He came back. He started many new things. Then he went back to US and taught at Michigan University, topped also in Harvard, and got a great name. And another person by name Vijay Govindarajan, today he figures out in the top 10 management gurus of the world. So these are all indicating in some of the soils we shine. But in our own soil, because we are such a huge country, we may not have all the time recognized, but that doesn't mean there is no talent. The talent is there, it is retained, it is here. So HR is based on the philosophy, every human being is born talented, irrespective of the place where you are born. Place is a situation that offers anyone can become anything. It is possible to do that. So all people are born talented. Only thing is some are lucky enough, and I call it lucky. They create circumstances. For some others, the circumstances get created by others around, and you make use of it, you don't make use of it. Now, for me, HRD has become a philosophy today. But it started, since you mentioned about Larsen and Toubro and other companies, it started that particular name, Dr. Uday Parikh, and I gave it to a function, created a new function in the year 1974. In the year 1974, there used to be only welfare departments and personnel departments in most companies. Very rightly so, they were looking after the welfare of employees, because if if the company looks after your welfare, you look after the company's welfare. That was the assumption. Personal department, if the personal manager manages you well, I think then you help the company to achieve. So we were asked to look at the performance appraisal, because most companies are concerned about managing performance. And they asked us to review the performance appraisal system. And we said that, look, any system, any people related system, personal management system, if you have to revise, we have to talk to people. When we talk to Larsen & Toubro executives, employees, and others, one question that they were kept on asking is, see how much time we spend for the organization. And some of them calculated the 1.5 hours we are in the bus when we come to the company, and the hour and a half in the bus again when we go back from the company, plus 8 hours in the company, almost coming to about 10 to 12 hours. While in the bus, we think of the company. While going back, we think of the company. We can't take company home, but we can't bring the home to the company, but we take the company home. If I didn't have a good boss, I will discuss about it with my people. My mood is off, etc. But I can't discuss my family problems in the company, and so on. Which means 60 to 70% of waking life of hours is spent in the organization. So if you're trying of an appraisal system, how do you make this appraisal system to make sure that we enjoy our work? So you have to come up with a system where I think working becomes joy, happiness at work. So what is it that the company is doing to make us feel that every moment we spend here is like a family and so on? That is when Uday Parikh and I stuck with this idea. I think if people help you to realize what you are expected to do, tell you very clearly, give you role clarity, keep on constantly guiding you, have performance feedback, point out the opportunities for you. So we created some, in the management jargon in those days, 6 subsystems: feedback, career planning, potential appraisal, all these things. If the department, if the organization can take care of you, you will take good care of the organization. That the personal department, we felt at the time, was not equipped to do so. We created a new department, which was called Human Resources Development Department, with the objective of building capabilities of people. Clarify the role. First of all, every person wants to know, what am I expected to do? Please share with me. And if I need knowledge, attitude, skills to do that, equip me with those. And keep on telling me periodically whether I'm doing the right thing or not, through what we call as feedback. Nowadays, they call it coaching. Those days, we called it as counseling. And please also help me to plan my career. What is the opportunities for me? Because if I spend a lot of time with the company, many years, across the years, I want to know the opportunities and so on. So that is how we formulated a Human Resource Development Department, and later called it as a part of the HR function. It was, so personnel looks after the administrative aspects, industrial relations aspects. HRD looks at the competence building, culture building. We brought in, I think, organizations should work at cultures. And then we also brought in commitment building. People should enjoy the work. So the purpose of HRD in an organizational context is this. But the same thing when you look at the national context, and this is where you go beyond corporate sector. You look at the country as a whole. This is something which I had written in the year 1992. I spent a year with the Commonwealth Secretariat. There, the question was that Commonwealth countries, which started more or less at the same level, let's say post-independence, some of them have phenomenally progressed. If you look at countries like Canada, Singapore, Australia, and UK itself, they have phenomenally progressed. But some of the countries like India and so on, they have not progressed. What is the secret behind the progress of the countries, and what can countries like India learn? That was the time UNDP brought in the concept of Human Development Index. It was 1990. The Human Development Index quantified the extent to which people of a country are developed. and they ranked all the countries. Now, India was ranked at 90 out of 110 countries. And when I went to London and understood this, I felt actually ashamed, because here in the country, we are all very proud that we have the third largest technical manpower of the world is in India. We are the second largest populous country, first largest democracy. But you go there to be told 89 countries have better developed human resources than your country. I think that got me determined to find out what is the secret of all the other countries. I wrote a book on human resource development interventions. This is HRD at national level. And I conceptualized, I mean, this is nothing new. I think today it is all common. Conceptualized human resource development at national level is also creating opportunities for people to discover their talent, apply the talent, and multiply the talent. Same reasoning which you do in a corporate sector, you can do in a country. What is the job? What does the HR department do or the company do? At a national level, the ministries do. I think I would, for example, say the best example is at the time when we were stuck with the pandemic. You can see the Prime Minister of the country himself stopped everything else and started focusing on educating people to wear masks, to respect the health workers, so many things. So he became HRD minister, actually, besides being the Prime Minister of the country. Now, this is something we believe. Every CEO of a company is also the main person who will manage people, because unless you create an atmosphere for people to give their best, they are not likely to give their best. If they can't give the best, you can't be productive and so on. So to me, I think at a national level, HRD is very critical. HRD is creating opportunities for people to discover their talent, apply the talent, and make a difference in the country. And organizations also is the same kind of a thing. Organizations are more purposive, systems driven. So the entire philosophy is based on these and making the country productive. That is how the GDP goes up. That is how country's name goes up. That is how everyone gets employment, opportunities, self-realization, all these things happen. Also, this is the concept of HRD. Sometime about, I must mention this to you, what happened is the story of HRD in the corporate sector is not always as positive as I am talking to you. This is what was desired. But what happened in reality, particularly if you look at between 1980 and 95, it is a mixed kind of a bag. Some organizations, without using even the term HRD, were doing marvelous job. If you look at people who are founders of companies like Birlas or TVS Group, TV Sundaram Iyengar or Murugappa Group, all of them, their founders, without using the term HRD, were very HRD driven. I mean, nobody need to give them a term, but they believe, Mr. Subaya used to tell us that in places like Burma, where Murugappa Group in those days was operating as money lenders, traders, and things like that, they had principles like if a family man joins to work with an agent, the agent would treat that man like any other employee. Like, I mean, if he uses employees to go and buy vegetables, the family man also will buy vegetables. I'm saying it in a lighter way, but it to symbolically. But once I think that the family person becomes mature to become an agent like, then the principle is post him in somewhere, and you never, the person who trained you, you can never boss over him. It's a very interesting HR philosophy that people train you, build you up, and then you go to expand rather than to boss over the people who train you. Interesting philosophy. Similarly, in TVS Group, people used to say that in Madurai, people used to set their watches by the time a bus comes, because they used to run buses, TVS Group at the time. That is a kind of a culture, disciplined culture and quality culture, purposive culture. Or GD Birlaji used to know every worker by name, if you look at it. So these people didn't have the term HRD, but they practiced HRD. But the modern organization had to be told all this philosophy, you need something like this. But between 1980 and 95, what happened was the personnel departments, we separated personnel and HRD. Unfortunately, personnel people renamed them as HRD, training people renamed them. So HRD became a generic word, but you continue to do whatever you were doing earlier. The HRD got quite a mixed name. Some companies it got a good name, but many companies it is new personal department, HRD in the garb of HRD and so on. So post liberalization, companies have become highly target driven. And when you are target driven, your mind is on the profit and you are comparing with other countries. So companies came under phenomenal kind of a pressure. HR people became businessmen in positive sense and negative sense, most often in negative sense, because they say, what are your targets? Have you set your target? So again, back to, I think, treating people as numbers. That is when Sadhguru, I'm sure you heard of Sadhguru, Asia Foundation, Coimbatore, Jaggi Vasudev. Sometime about 7-8 years ago, I was attending a program on leadership there. Jaggi Vasudev very casually said, human is not a resource. It's crime to call human being as a resource, because you call something a resource and you assign a number and treat that human being as a number, and that is disastrous. He said human beings are possibilities. Human beings can make many things happen, which is exactly the philosophy when we coined the term human resource development. But unfortunately, because it got diluted, I said this may be a good idea to tell people that human is not merely a resource, human being is an infinite resource. This is very important. Don't treat human being as a person to achieve your targets. It's a person to make a difference. In fact, we started raising the question, what is the purpose of any organization? If we look at the purpose of any organization, every organization, including a cigarette manufacturing company and liquor manufacturing company, these are not considered to be great organizations, but even they say that we are in the business of creating happiness in people. Even if you say it is temporary, it brings out the best. And then the ITC, for example, India Tobacco Company, if you look at their own history, it doesn't remain as a tobacco company today. It, I think, created so many farmers' kiosks and so many things that they have done. So everyone, including the so-called companies which we sometimes say are not desirable in the society, which need not be true. They say we are meant to serve people. Every organization, government is to serve people, NGOs are to serve people. So all the purpose of organization is to serve people, and you can serve people only when your employees are happy. So human is not a resource movement. We started promoting that to say that treat human being as a human being. Don't treat as a target, as a number and things like that. I think that has resulted at least in creating a little more consciousness, have a new respect for human beings. So we now talk of human resource development is also human possibilities development. Treat every human being as a creative source, wherever you are, whether you are in an NGO, whether you are in a government or in a corporate sector and things like that. HR is a philosophy. It's a way of life where you respect each other, you respect yourself, and you discover, I keep saying jocularly, you discover the Hanuman in you. You know the concept of Hanumanji. He has forgotten his strengths because of a shaft that he went through. You know, he was playing with the sun like a football, and then he got this shaft that you forget your strengths. And when his Vayuputra, when Vayu, they when others went and pleaded with sun, okay, he said, all right, when people remind you, you will regain your. I think there is some kind of a Hanuman in all of us. Westerners call it Pygmalion effect. That means you recognize your strengths, multiply it, and make it available to society. So to me, HR is a philosophy. HR is a way of looking at things. HR is looking inward and bringing out the talent. And when you look at HR of other people, it is creating, if you're CEO, if you're anybody, creating circumstances where people recognize and apply the talent for the larger welfare of the society. I've talked quite a bit. I may not have covered each and everything that you wanted, but this is essentially the idea of human resources development. People are born with unlimited talents. I think we should create circumstances for them to discover the talent, apply the talent for the welfare of each other and largely for the welfare of the society, make a difference in the society and so on. Whether it is corporate sector, government, politics, anything, this is supposed to be the kind of purpose. Does it make sense, Amit?
Yeah, I mean, so many things. What else do you expect from Dr. T.V. Rao? When we ask him to speak, I'm sure in the interest of paucity of time, he tried to be succinct and touched upon many branches of a tree, which probably is something which has to be nurtured continuously. I mean, Dr. Rao, you said, you started in 74 with Mr. Parekh, and L&T was one of the base, that you used. And they were presidents before you started with companies, and greats like Mr. G.D. Birla, who were already practicing such things. What do you have to say about the Tatas?
Oh, they are one of those who have shown this from the beginning itself. If we really look at the creation of Jamshedpur as a city and creation of, I think, anywhere that you go, the kind of welfare facilities and the kind of stories that you hear, even people like Russi Modi and others, other than when they started smelling the workers' toilet to be smelling, I think they simply, the story goes, shifted the board of executives and put it in front of the, the workers' toilet. These are all concerns for people. I think Tata is a great company. A lot of stories, a lot of philosophy, where I think employees were treated with respect uh, and so on. I think I agree with you, like the people I have mentioned. In fact, I think today they continue to be fairly good legends with HR philosophy.
I mean, when you started, Tatas were already 100 plus years into existence almost. In fact, they completed almost 200 years recently. And so, I mean, was there not, were there threads which were left loose by the Tatas, or did you improve upon what they did? Or what was it in common? Because if we call you the father of HRD, the grand old man, what would we call him? And Nusarvanji Tata, somebody whose great statue lies right positioned right at the entrance of the Tata Steel plant. When I recently visited, I was mesmerized to look at what this gentleman laid the foundation of. And when I read his biography or autobiography, I was mesmerized to read one line where he was heard saying that the job of industry is not, social work. The job of industry is to basically create people who can contribute to society.
Yeah,
Basically, he wanted to create people, give them opportunities to earn their own living instead of becoming the Robin Hood, the Neta who is serving the people. That is what his philosophy was. And that
yeah,
is exactly what the trap that this entire country has fallen into the hands of the politicians, into our own hands. Because politicians are not separate from the society. They are part, and they are the offshoots of the kind of social fabric that we have won for our own selves. And that is what today probably paralyzes the entire the demography of this country, the entire fabric of this country, the growth of this nation, wherein this freebies, these dole outs are probably the only reason why we are going backwards instead of progressing and harnessing the demographic dividend. So if the organization policies of Mr. Tata have to be what do you call, they have to be looked into in hindsight. What are the key learnings that you would like to suggest? Because I'm sure you had very close interactions with them, because you're also an XLRI product yourself, somebody who knows the Jamshedpur, city of Jamshedpur and Tata so very well.
yeah. Well, first of all, I think this, I feel very embarrassed when people use the term father of HRD. I am not any father of HRD. I think it's a mischievous title given by some people who I don't want to say, want to unnecessarily embarrass me. They may have given it. Number two, most important point I like to make is you don't have to have a HR department to have a HR philosophy. That is what Tatas represent. They did not have any department which was titled as HR. The founder himself is a personification of now HR is nothing but people orientation. Respect for people means believe in the talent, believing in the welfare, and believe your job is to create circumstances where people can give their best. That is what they have, you have said. So I think Tata, there is a lot to learn. Tata may not have had HR department if they have had at some point of time. In fact, one of the persons at XLRI, Jitendra Singh later went and he was heading the HR of Tata Steel for quite some time, introduced some practices. But I think all the top management, in fact, you interacted with some of them, whether you look at Mr. Muthuraman or Narendran or Rusi Modi earlier, so many of them. They were all people-driven people, with whatever. Okay. They, in fact, I think Rusi Modi at some point of time was in charge of the personnel function and things like that. But that's a separate kind of an issue. So you don't have to have the HR title. You can be that. Now, Larsen and Toubro and Tatas. I think Tatas were much earlier. The Danish engineers who started Larsen and Toubro were more of engineers. They, I don't think, would have started this company with a people kind of a thing, and they were engineering company. They were perfect in this. But I think L&T realized that it is the people who drive business. In Tata's, people as the focal point was there from the beginning. Now, in companies like Larsen and Toubro, or most of the companies today, which are huge companies, including public sector, HR becomes an important dimension to divert their thinking. Now you look at the public sector, any public sector. If you look at any public sector, most of the time the decision to set up the public sector is based on, public sector company is based on HR considerations. But their HR is not employees, people whom the organization serves, whether it is oil company, whether it is steel company or a fertilizer company, any of these are meant for people at large. Same thing I think Tata's originally, if you look at, have had. But when you start a company to serve a purpose, there is something that happens without you ever recognizing it. And that is, means become ends. Profit is a means. Actually, service is the end. But you forget service. You get sometimes, I think maybe the ministries keep on asking you question. Now you should improve your performance by X number, Y number, and things of that kind. Or targets come into picture. So the original purpose sometimes goes to the background, and the targets take over. And that is where the means, when they become ends, it creates problems. So HR helps you to remind you that, look, your original purpose is something else. Always link employee purpose with the larger organizational purpose. Otherwise, you will not have commitment. This is a philosophical issue, also a systems issue. Why do you promote quality circles? Because quality is important, ultimately to serve the people, to make products available at lower cost so that many people can afford it. But you don't take quality circle just as a target, a HR target or any other target. You take it as a process of innovation and things of that kind. So in sum, I would want to say that if you have HR department, they periodically draw your attention to the larger purpose, help employees to integrate with the larger purpose, and help them to also feel that they are contributing to a larger purpose. They are not a cog in the wheel. They are people who make a difference in the lives of people. Somebody who makes steel or fertilizer, I think that is the purpose of HR. I don't want to say all HR people are doing this job. In fact, HR people also get trapped into profits, targets, and forget the larger causes. So that is why we say sometimes you need to do HR audit and get people to remember what is the very purpose of setting up the HR department and so on. So we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. But I think we are doing
from whatever you just now spoke, two observations from whatever you just now spoke. One is public sector. Now, the management of public sector vis-a-vis private sector cannot be compared. I mean, I'm sure the HR practices, even if they are, it's just like the Raga and Tala thing. The disciplines might be the same, but the freedom in which they have to be exercised have to be very, very differently exercised in both the sectors, public and private. Your key observations on the differences between the management of public and private sector companies, especially the central public sector companies. Also public, when I say, I mean central and state both separately. You know, because India is a federal country and it is something which has got political dispensations of various kinds. From a state perspective, a leftist state, the dynamics are totally different. When you talk about a state which is not a lot, not into that, not skewed from the left perspective, the dynamics are totally different. So would you like to throw some light on that particular aspect of management of these institutions, which are different in terms of their social, kind of existence?
Well, number one, both of them are meant to serve the people at large. Either public sector, private sector, it doesn't matter. The purpose is to serve people at large. Now, public sector has certainly some challenges, but my view of public sector in India is that they have been doing marvelous job. Only thing that happens in public sector is that employees take whatever they get for granted. Okay, and may not always appreciate because they think that it's okay, so this is a job, and then ask for more by comparing with the private sector. I think it's very unfair to compare any employee working in a private sector bank or a public sector company with private sector and things like that, because the moment you have joined a public sector, you join an organization that was set up with largely social kind of considerations, although to make it profitable. So it's very difficult for public sector to constantly balance this, because the society, the government is all the time saying do's and don'ts. For example, if we take the issue of reservations, you need this, and therefore I think public sector has to honor the commitment that you have in terms of reservations that are there and things of that nature. The public sector may say it puts us into disadvantage. My way of saying is this is your job. There is nothing to. So I agree with you on some areas. There are difficulties in comparing. Public sector has certain freedom which the private sector may not have, certain opportunities, or private sector may have freedom. But we have had some interesting experiences, which I will share one of them. A large number of public sector employees between the year 95 and 2000 in companies like Steel Authority of India, Indian Oil Corporation, NTPC, and such other companies left the company. Good number, I don't say big number, some number, significant number from top management, went and joined. If you remember, that was the time private sector set up, I won't take the names, oil companies, private sector, I think came into steel and came into all. We conducted there is an Academy of Human Resource Development, so we had some research staff who went and 2 years after some of the public sector employees joined the private sector, when about 200 of them were interviewed, and they asked them, what do you feel? And you will be very surprised. A large number of them said that when we were in public sector, we always felt that we didn't have freedom. Okay, and everything is dictated from the top. When we came to private sector, we now recognize what a freedom that we have had in the public sector. There are a number of things we never realized we could do in public sector. And in private sector, we felt, some of them said, I think you have to follow whatever the boss says. That's not so. There are norms, there are values, then there are rules in the public sector. Whereas in private sector, some of the private sector, it is boss says the final word. I know some of the CEOs, even an advertisement budget of 500 rupees in a big company with multi-crore company, it has to have the approval of the CEO. Whereas in a public sector, if you look at it, there are delegation of powers, well-written norms, well-written rules. I think these are all partly HR outcomes. So in my view, HR in most of the public sector companies is good. They really take welfare. You look at steel plants, you have created townships for them. And look at the hospitals that they have. You look at the educational institutions they have. So I am a great admirer of public sector, but having said that, the problem with employees in public sector is they don't realize what they have. They always look at what somebody else has in the private sector. And that's where the problem comes. I think this is what we are trying to be. Whenever I go there, I keep reminding my job, you don't know. Okay, if you look at some of the banks, I think the amount of pension they have to pay today for employees, retired employees, the way they treat them, the kind of facilities they have, they treat you as a real human being. And what they expect from you is you serve your customers well.
I guess
So this is what I think. This is not to criticize private sector. Even private sector learns from the public.
I think this is just a case of, the grass is always greener on the other side. Because you see, what my experience in front of you, or in front of people like you on your subject, But then I can definitely share what I feel. At least my experience is that uh, I mean, it's only a case of grass being green on the other side, because even today, most of the Indians, for them, uh, they have arrived in life if they have a public job or if they have a government job.
Yeah,
I mean, just I hardly watch television, but the moment I open the television, for example, if I open the television today, what I saw was the Punjab government extensively advertising, marketing, the creation of huge number of government jobs, as a political campaign. Now, if that is something which can drive political campaigns, we all understand that what the society in India feels about the kind of significance of getting a government job, and which is very we can we find it across the nook and corner of the entire society. But once they get into the government job, then they start cribbing about, ranting about the private sector having more opportunities. I know the timeline for career growth, the jump of the salaries, all these things they start cribbing about. But the stability, the freedom, the kind of bonuses, the kind of corona times, entire country, not only the world, forget the world. I mean, at least in India, I do not know anyone who was working in the private sector who felt safe, except for some very big organizations. But public sector people, I mean, they were just smiling. They were all smiling because their salaries were coming at the end of the month. So this entire debate about public versus private, I think Corona is something, COVID-19 3 years has taught us lessons which now we did not be, what do you call, we did not be really taught again and again. That
yeah, I agree. Yes.
they have their own. And now, if I come to trade unions, the management of trade unions, something which has plagued especially the public sectors. People have built political careers out of it. Maharashtra, there have been umpteen such cases, great cases, especially when the Marathi Tamil divide was there. And you've seen Mumbai from those days, from close quarters, the days of Mr. Panvelkar, that is Mr. Thackeray, Mr. Balasaheb Thackeray, also the real name is Panvelkar. And then also we had recently Mr. Arvind Sawant, who came out of his MTNL days to become a union minister for public sector companies in India, government of India. So you've seen those days about, and trade unions. I mean, the Naxal movements, states like West Bengal, Kerala, plagued by Naxal, CPIM, leftist policies. What do you have to say to them? And how can industry or HRD practices really play, kind of an important role of saving grace role as far as these kind of politically turbulent situations are concerned?
Yeah, I must mention that I have given whatever I have given in the last few years to human resource development. Now, you used a term in the beginning, HRM, human resource management. I'm not a specialist in human resource management. It does mean that you can be ignorant about what is happening. I always define human resource management is equal to human resource development plus industrial relations, employee relations, what you're mentioning about unions and others, plus human resource administration. Three things. That is the equation that I draw. But sometimes human resource development becomes a larger kind of a thing. It subsumes everything and so on. As far as the IR is concerned, industrial relation is concerned, I have taken a view. In fact, we ran some programs almost 25, 30 years ago to union association leaders, that it is your job to make your employees build their own capability and commitment and bring happiness in their lives. So just as a CEO becomes the first HR manager, a union leader also becomes should be a good HR manager for employees. But it is one thing to speak it in a classroom. It is another thing to really see them in observation. Because I think there is a basic fundamental tenet that seems to work in our company. How do you become centric to other people and not self-centric? I think sometimes many of us work for ourselves and not for the society. And when a union leader or association leader or a politician or anyone puts self in front and forgets the larger kind of a cause, and you are not able to manage this, integrate, see the linkages, then I think all kinds of trouble stop. So I have always maintained, to me, industrial relations is a positive way. Your job is to build people. Is not you build your own kind of an empire. But as I say it, I'm not a specialist. I don't want to comment on it. I have nothing to comment on. Certainly, when somebody,
Entrepreneur versus the CEO.
yeah,
Entrepreneur versus the CEO, because you see, this entire thing that you've been talking about is the sensitivity, the orientation towards people. A CEO who is getting paid 4 crores rupees salary, or somebody who's getting 30 lakh rupees a month. I mean, and then his next goal is to get some 50 lakh rupees a month somewhere in this competitive environment post liberalization. I mean, and today the salaries are completely, illogical. For me, the salaries that are being doled out in the private sector, especially, are something which defy logic to me. Anyways, how do you kind of balance the mindset between us? It's not possible because an CEO. I mean, what is your suggestion for a CEO or probably an entrepreneur who appoints a CEO? Because they are all target driven. The entrepreneur has profits in mind. The CEO has the job in mind. Where does the person or where does the human resource stand in all this?
well, I think you have raised many issues, and this requires a lot of debate. But one thing I want to say is during pandemic time, we were all living. We were not going out. We were living in the house almost for a year. And in my house, me, my wife, and my son, three of us were living. And the monthly expenditure for us, because we were not paying any rent, we had our own flat, was less than 7,000-8,000 rupees per month. So post-pandemic, I asked this question: if you can live with 7,000 to 8,000 rupees, what is the point of? I don't understand why all these people are talking of crores and crores. It just doesn't make sense to me. What do you do with all these crores? Where will you? I think the day you are dead, you are going to be everything is going to be buried. So I think in our country we have overplayed this. Now you're a billionaire. What? How does this mean? You're an ordinary person when you look at it. And I think there are many good examples of great CEOs who live ordinary life. I mean, people like Narayan Murthy and others. If you look at it, I still remember the day when I visited Murthy ji. He was standing in the queue along with others for getting his fish in the lunchroom. I think even today he continues to have his own values. When he comes to IIM, he had his colleagues who worked with him long ago. They will have potluck dinner. That is the way it is, like anywhere else. I think it is money has its own place. You make other people millionaires, but I think if you work only for it, God save you. That's what I will say. You are not going to carry all this. I think we have overrated, overpaid.
By not answering these kind of questions, probably you, because if Dr. T.V. Rao chooses not to answer few questions, that is the biggest answer for those questions, actually. Now,
no, I think there will be lots of interesting views. I'm not saying that you shouldn't contribute to the GDP, but GDP is not measured in terms of the salaries you get. GDP is measured in terms of how much of economic activity you have.
I mean, you get paid 4 crore rupees of salary. You have every second day in the Economic Times, there is an article about how a 21-year-old landed up with a 3 crore job somewhere after doing some graduation somewhere. What is this going on? I mean, where are we heading? And what is this HRD department this company is thinking about?
I don't know if HRD department has any thinking on this, but some HRD departments are promoting this by going to campuses and then getting the students to compete for CTC. I am strongly against this. In fact, I would here blame the ministry also, Ministry of HRD. Why do you get rankings to academic institutions in which I think CTC becomes a very important kind of a thing? I understand research is a good way of looking at it and things like that. So HRD ministry should totally review and look at, I think, B schools and others more in terms of the kind of contributions that are made to the society than the kind of salaries you're getting. I think then they will say the whole world is like this. You look at Financial Times, you look at Economic Times. I think this is the major criteria. So you are a change master, change the world. You don't follow what others are doing.
So private institutions are all the time looking for, getting more and more students.
Leads the way.
And I see, sir, private institutions have they are into the horde of getting more and more students, and the fees are all going over the roof. But anyways, these are issues which need completely different. We're just touching upon various issues. Empathy quotient, sir. What is your view on empathy quotient as a very, very important way of assessing human beings? Empathy quotient, and do HR practices. Have you seen examples of empathy quotient being utilized by companies for assessing human factors in their companies?
I think there is a great realization of the need for empathy, because I think successful leaders have you may still measure it or may not measure it, high empathy. And if you look at last 2 to 3 years, gratitude to the rest of the society. In fact, I think there are thoughts which say that if somebody has become rich, it is because he owes all this to the poor who remained poor. So that is gratitude. I think those people who are getting these hundreds of crores of salary, 5 crores, 10 crores, should be grateful to all those who are not getting and try to do something for those who are not getting this. So I strongly believe empathy quotient is very important, because all those who have should be empathetic and should certainly help those who probably don't have and bring them up. And surprisingly, those who don't have seem to have much higher empathy rather than those who have. So I support the whatever work is being done. I think it is important to understand, be empathetic, not selectively to some people, but empathetic to. Empathy is putting yourself into the shoes of others. And when a teacher empathizes with the student, he becomes a better teacher. When a manager empathizes with the juniors, he becomes a better manager. And leader emphasizes, CEO empathizes. Okay, that is where empathy becomes very important for success. So it's a good thought. Quotient is a way, I think, you express it as a measure. And there are many people who do the problem with all this measurement is you bring in this quotient and all that, you start measuring, you will showing, it will become like, I don't believe India today, if you look at Human Development Index, today we are 130 or 31 among 190 countries. 30 years ago, we were 90 among. I can't believe this is true. I think we are, now if this is true, it's still a shame that we have not been able to help people to live longer. Certainly, longevity has gone up. Skill gap has gone up. Not skill gap, the mean years of schooling has gone up, but still other countries are progressing, we are low. So Human Development Index is a good index, but I don't want to rely on the time. So it's a good idea to have empathy quotient, but use it to provoke people to be more empathetic, not to use it to beat people. You provoke
There
people
is,
to be.
so I do understand from where it comes, from where you're coming, because you see, balancing between being empathetic and being smart is something, very, very difficult or literally impossible, because it's a catch-22 situation. But now I
Yes.
take you to some another aspect. There's psychometric tests. This is one way wherein people are assessed with one particular sheet with 25 hackneyed questions. Everybody has to sit for those questions, and some machine immediately analyzes that you are good at something, you have this trait. I mean, do you believe in psychometric tests?
Sorry, what is your last question? Yeah, with all
You,
these 25.
with all these tests that are conducted by these companies while recruiting, there is something called the psychometric test, with there is
Yes.
a set of questions conducted, everybody answers, 10,000 applicants, and they have the assessment done based on some machine or some artificial intelligence or whatever they have in mind. And now suddenly you are able to tell with the help of those questions whether somebody is having this particular trait, he's a leader, he is a follower, he's somebody who is articulate, he's somebody who's manipulative. I mean, do you believe in that?
See, first of all, I do believe that human beings can be developed at any stage of life. Okay, these tests, if it is well tested out, and I am sorry to say, I don't think people have done enough research to come up with these tests. Sometimes these have become rackets. You pick up hundreds of items and feed it to the computer, anything will give and things like that. That I'm not very sure. I don't want to comment on any one specific kind of a thing. But I have seen in my own life, talking to people interviewing them about what they have done is a technology technique we use, behavior event interview. Very interesting kind of a thing. Just ask people, what have you done in the last 2 years? How did you approach it? Okay, when I interview somebody about the why is he wanting to leave the job, and if he's filled with what he could not do in the current company and so on, I start wondering what will he do in my company. I would expect the person to say, in this company, I've done this. What more do you want to do? I want to do this. I not have opportunity. That's why your company may give this opportunity. That makes more sense to me. In other words, when you use interviews, it is not to say don't use tests, collect background. But let me tell you, all psychometric tests are fakeable. They can be fake. Knowledge tests are not fakeable. For knowledge tests, if you have good degree college, I think they would have already tested you. You don't need another knowledge test. But if somebody wants to test mechanical engineer or see, knowledge tests are 2 into 2 is 4. Attitude tests, the moment you say 2 into 2 is 4, then I say you are a conformist. If you say 2 into 2 is 22, you are a creative fellow. 2 into 2 can be less than 4, then you have observed some thing in our society where 2 plus 2 people, when they get together, they only start quarreling and so on. So there are different inferences you can make. Now, these 2,500 item tests, and at the end of it, reducing the human being, I think this is a mechanism they have invented only to shortlist some people. How reliable they are, how valid they are, I'm not very sure. They must be doing their own kind of research. I think they are constantly, like IIMs, 3 lakhs of people who are appearing every year. Every year they change the tests, but they also maintain the data. They try to correlate with the outcomes. I don't want to say that they are the best in the lot, but you know, they have only limited number of seats, therefore they have to use. So they use quantitative methods, English knowledge, and finally in the interview, even they have not done away with interviews. Come to the interview, we want to feel you, we want to see what kind of a person you are and things like that. So I will take with a pinch of salt the question that you have asked, 2,500 items using AI. I'm not very sure. I think AI has not yet developed, in my view. I'm not a specialist in technology, but has not developed to a level where we can rely on it. In fact, AI could be misguiding. The most misguiding thing I found is ChatGPT. Recently, I was invited by a university, by a college, for inauguration of something. When I went there, somebody read out my biodata. I think he downloaded using ChatGPT, and it's a set of lies. He said that I'm a PhD from University of California, which I never visited. And I went to Harvard Business School to do my advanced management program. I went to Harvard University to work with McClellan, but now, so it is ChatGPT. So AI is garbage in and garbage out. I think we have a lot of garbage on the internet. So I don't want to kill the creativity of people by saying, give your assignment using ChatGPT. You may call me conservative, but having said that, AI can predict, if you have used it properly, you can predict your health status and say that, look, this is how sugar has damaged you in the last week. These are the medicines you have taken. This is the outcome, etc., etc. And you can predict environment. I think I'm sure that, for example, if you have had all records and things of that kind, and that is what helped you, for example, to predict the cyclone and prepare for it. No, if today government is claiming not a single death, this is because you all work like a team, but you also prepared using the technology that is available. All these kind of things.
I think
talking a lot, Amit.
I think Rao
this
Saab,
can be never ending.
Rao Saab, this is a topic, which is the reason I'm extending this beyond what I comprehended is because there are thousands of plethora of such questions, but then when we hear it from you, the views are very practical, and then it is coming from you. That is the reason and this is going to be meant for the world, for the country, for each and every individual. I mean, in the society today, generally it is not the case when I talk to somebody who's conducted the surgical strikes, but it is definitely what you are going to be talking about is important for each and every person in the society. That is why I just don't feel like stopping this, but I'll have to do that. So another 3-4 minutes and I'll stop it. I mean, you said about human, you see, this artificial intelligence versus this. It's almost like that, human versus robot kind of debate.
Yes.
I mean, and secondly, one can't teach your father to reproduce, simple. I mean, to be sorry for giving such an example, such a raw example, but then, I mean, you teach your father how to reproduce. That's what AI teaches you about being human. So basically, it's the same kind of analogy that I draw. Now, if I talk about the human interaction to assess somebody, I mean, today's HR, a girl coming out of a girl or a boy. I mean, I don't want to sound feminist. What do you call chauvinist? Any young boy or girl coming out of an
College.
IIM or XLRI, 24, 23-year-old, and then she becomes a management trainee in somewhere in a big company with a says 25 lakh salary or probably a 5 lakh salary a month. And then finally, in a year's time, she is interviewing somebody with a 30 years experience in that particular sector. I mean, do you think it makes sense?
No, if you
I mean,
take
does it
it
make
from,
sense even I mean, from a non-technical perspective also, does it make sense? A man who's 55-year-old, spent 30 years, has two daughters of her age. Now he's being interviewed by
no,
that girl.
let me argue in favor of this girl or boy with 5 years experience, interviewing a person with 30 years experience. Your 30 years experience has its value. We value it. The 5 years experience in today's context is one where you're educated, you're upskilled, you have a different understanding, and you are working for a company which is futuristic, and therefore you are assessing whether your 30 years experience, with due respects to you, whether your 30 years experience has any streaks of the thing that will help us for a job that we are looking. So the person with 5 years experience is at a pedestal and in a context. I think we have to look at the context. What she or he is assessing is contextual fit of a 30-year-old experienced person. Not
Objectively,
concluding
Rao
competence.
Saab,
You
Rao
are not
Saab,
competent.
Rao
Huh?
Saab, objectively, it could make sense, definitely, because
Yes.
contextually, objectively, it could make sense. But then in that case, doesn't it become very clerical and somebody with a 50,000 job also could have done that job?
Sorry, that it doesn't go well with the 30-year-old person.
No. I'm saying objectively it fits. What you're saying is
What I
absolutely
have said, yeah, in favor
is
of
right.
that. Yes.
In favor of that is I also am aligned to that process that yes, objectively and contextually she can do the competency mapping. I can
Yes.
understand that much, but
Yeah.
then would that not be good enough for even a somebody getting a 50,000 salary coming out of some kind of Sion business school? Would she also not be able to do that same clerical kind of an exercise?
I wouldn't be able to. That's a call which the company has to take. Now we training all people to be. I have come across lecturers who just graduated from their own college and have been appointed as lecturer and is teaching the students. And they are doing a good job, I am told. Some of them, not everyone. So I think in this life, it is the competence that becomes very important. It is possible to. But having said that, I think we should continue to respect those people who have rich experience. And people, I mean, the fact that you are time and again, you are referring to me, I was saying 75 years. See, what you think that I have some wisdom to share, no? Isn't it? Something to share. So experience, wisdom, other things, I think they are there. So they have to be respected. And that, in my view, is an Indian culture. And we are very proud about that culture.
Best
That
thing
people
about your
are,
experience, sir, the best thing about your experience, which made me pull this interaction from 30 minutes designated to almost 1 hour, 5 minutes now, is self-realization and, kind of honesty.
yes,
That is something, self-realization, honesty. You may be wrong. You may be proven wrong, but
absolutely.
at least you were honest and you believed in what you were speaking.
Yeah.
That is what, that is what, that is what
Nice
is,
of
that
you.
is
That's very, very nice of you, Very nice.
That is the quality that a human being has to imbibe. The alignment of thought, words, and action.
Yes, right. That's what I call as integrity.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that is what Mr. J.R.D. Tata, people like Mr. Nusarwanji
Oh,
Tata,
yes.
people like Mr. Azim Premji, people like Mr. Narayana Murthy, and I hope, this mad rush, Rao Saab, we'll keep continuing this because we need to have more such interactions with you. I'm sure if we are lucky, we will have them. But then people like these, the names that I just took, are people who we might have read in articles, but you have to really see what they live like, what the real lifestyle that they lead. Once you see that and you can learn from them, only then I think HRD training, HRD, education in institutions like the IIMs, like the XLRI, the topmost flag bearers of our higher education, the students who come out of these, if they can imbibe such practices of honesty, ethics, integrity, and then start respecting. The biggest problem of today's generation is, too much into themselves. They do not know, and they do not really know about respecting others who are seniors, people who have experience, and they do not really know the value of experience. The moment they are told the value of experience, they are taught, they are sensitized towards it, along with the education in the textbooks. And these salaries obviously are something which makes all the difference, because if you have so much of money that comes with your education, and it's a case of have and have nots. So how to strike a balance so that the society doesn't have to go to that syndrome of I am rich because you were poor. That syndrome has to be taken out of our entire ecosystem, and only then we can reach an egalitarian society, a society which is egalitarian in nature, and something which a state of utopia that we desire, that we dream of. Only when people like Dr. T.V. Rao and their teachings, their experiences are imbibed in letter and spirit by the aspiring HRD professionals of this country and the world. Thank you, Dr. T.V. Rao. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
talking to you, sir. And we hope to learn more from you as we continue in this journey of Vision India Forums of Amrit Kal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All the best for your efforts. Thank you.